this is Kieron, Coach's Corner Chats, and on the episode today, I have Sarah Lowdon. Sarah, where are you at and what are you up to?
Well, Kieron, first of all, thanks for having us. I really appreciate it. I know this is the first day of you winter break and you get to spend a little bit of time with me, so thanks for doing that. I'm originally from Newcastle, England, and that's where I am right now, home for Christmas, so the accent might be a little bit thicker. And honestly, over the last 10 days since I've been back, I've followed Newcastle United around the country. Obviously, we've just been bought by new owners, so it's a really exciting time to be a Newcastle fan. So just been to Liverpool, and now I'm back in Newcastle and watched them play against Manchester City, and now just preparing for the run up to Christmas.
Yeah, is Newcastle like a family? Like everybody in the family loves Newcastle?
Yeah, I didn't really have a choice on who I was going to support when I was a kid. There's three things that Newcastle's known for, and it's beer, Newcastle Brown Ale, it's nightlife, and it's football. And so, we kind of laugh that when you're from a place like this, you grow up dragged around the game of football. And so I had no choice on who I supported. So obviously painful being a Newcastle supporter in the past. Hopefully the future is better ahead. But yeah, so I'm a Newcastle supporter, unfortunately or fortunately. And so, yeah.
Was that what got you into like your love of soccer?
100%. I remember going to my first game when I was 7, and it was an FA Cup replay against Newcastle versus Stevenage. And I remember we scored. I think it was Alan Shearer scored in the Galgate end, and I was behind the goal. And I remember I went with my uncle, and when we scored, he picked us up and my shoe fell off, and we had to surf through the crowd to try and find my shoe. But yeah, I just remember that. And ever since then, I just fell in love with the game. I actually did come home one day when I was really young, when I used to play football outside with the boys. I found a Man United jersey and I came home with it. It was a Fabian Barthez goalkeeper jersey, and my mum put it in the bin and said I couldn't have it.
Wow, get that stuff out of here. So then did you, as you're growing up in Newcastle, did you end up playing were there opportunities, I guess back then, were there, not to sound rude, but were there female opportunities to play in the youth leagues and like within your school setting?
When I was younger, it's in England. It was kind of, when I was younger, it was kind of a man's sport, a boy's sport, if you like. And I wasn't able to play in elementary school because girls weren't allowed to play. And then I didn't actually start playing until I was 12, which is kind of, I guess, really late now when you think about how young people, kids start playing. And I was actually at a festival. I could either play field hockey or football, and I picked football because I had basically made both teams. I went to some tryout and made the tryout, and I was playing for Gateshead, which Gateshead's kind of a borough within the suburb of Newcastle. And from there, I was actually scouted for 3 teams. So there was Bolton at the time, Sunderland, and Newcastle. And because I was obviously Newcastle mad, and it was kind of my childhood club, that's the club I picked. Out with I guess I had kind of been scouted by the U14 coach. And so from the ages of 12 to 18, I played for Newcastle United women, and the club is still going today.
So at what point did you transition and start thinking, you know what, I'd love to coach soccer as well, beyond just playing?
Well, I think I've said this a few times on different things that I've been on, but when I was younger, I was obsessed with this game called Championship Manager. And you've probably seen some people on Twitter that play that game. I don't play it because it would be a dangerous game for me to play it. I probably wouldn't be able to work because I got so obsessed with it when I was younger, but I used to play it for like 10 hours a day. And I used to manage Newcastle United, and I used to try and manage the big clubs, the bigger clubs, I guess, at the time. And I used to try and fine, when David Beckham played for Manchester United, I used to try and fine him so then we could buy him because he would be unhappy at Manchester United, but he never actually came to Newcastle. He wouldn't come. So yeah, I mean, I was obsessed with the X's and O's from a young age in management. And I was a big Bobby Robson fan, especially when he was the manager of Newcastle United. And yeah, it just kind of spiraled from there. I knew when I came to America at 18, and you kind of go through the process of your junior year, you started trying to figure out what you're going to do after. And I knew I probably wasn't good enough to be a professional player, obviously, and so it was just a natural progression to get into the coaching ranks. Got my first coaching badge at 16, FA Level 1, which was organised through the sport academy that I played for at Gateshead. And so from there, it was just kind of, I said, like a natural progression to get into the coaching ranks.
Why the move to the States? Why not stay in England and try to become, coaching and build from there? What was the impetus that said, I want to go to the US and see what that experience could be like?
It's funny, when I was 15, I was super fearless. 15 to 18, I was totally fearless. Now I'm like 32 and scared of my front door. It's like, but you know, I just think there was a few players at Newcastle that had tried it, who were at Memphis, and there was like some smaller schools that some players had gone to, and so it was just for me. I think I just at the time in England, obviously the game's a lot big, the women's game's a lot bigger now, and there's a lot more opportunity. But at that time, there just wasn't, you know, a great deal of opportunity beyond Newcastle. We had the first team, the reserves, and we had a U21 team. And the Newcastle team at that time was just stacked full of talent. And so, yeah, I think I wanted to combine my studies with playing, and I could have done that at Northumbria, which is a university, in kind of Newcastle. And it's probably the best sport academy beyond Loughborough's kind of the top of the chain, but Northumbria is the local, it's a really good sport university, and there's no scholarships or anything here. And so I just think I wanted to get a different experience from the usual, and I kind of just went for it and did the process myself somehow. And yeah, ended up in America, and 13 years still there.
What was your family's take when you said, you know what, I'm thinking about going to the States, pursuing the idea of getting an education and also pursuing coaching soccer?
Well, they actually laughed because I was in Brownies when I was younger, and I couldn't last a weekend at Brownie camp. I was homesick, and they had to come pick me up. So when I told them that I wanted to go to America and play, they just thought it was kind of, you know, it would be a phase, I guess, and I would kind of phase out of it. But I stuck with it for 2 years through the process. I started that process when I was, I guess, 15 and a half. And then, you know, just kind of made videos, you know, kind of the DVD quality back then was really poor. I was kind of just this blob on the screen, and the ball on the screen for coaches to watch. That was before you could actually upload videos to YouTube. So I sent out DVDs. I worked at this little shoe shop, and all the money that I made from the shoe shop, I would make DVDs and send them out to the US, and, you know, get some bites back from some coaches. So yeah, so that was kind of how that process worked. But yeah, my parents, I think they were excited because it meant they got a vacation to America every year. But I don't think they particularly wanted me to stay the length of time that I have. They always love when I come home.
What has that been like, being away from family? Like now you're home for kind of an extended period of time and spending time and doing all the cooking and all the family things again. What's it been like those 10 plus years being away for extended periods of time?
Yeah, I think it's really hard because you miss out on so much. You miss out on christenings, weddings, you know, even funerals. You miss out on a ton of stuff. You miss out on just, you know, my brother is 34, 35, and I see him once a year, and it's, you know, he I don't know, you just feel like sometimes you don't know them as well as you know the people you work with every day, you know. It's just kind of strange. But the more I come back, the more I'm more grateful for coming back. But I just realized how detached I am because I've been in America so long. Like it was funny. I was actually in the shop the other day, and I was trying to figure out if body lotion was shower gel. But shower gel is actually called shower gel here, and I don't know, it's just like all these little translations I forgot about. And so I love coming back. I was actually fortunate to come back last year during COVID. I got my American citizenship right when the pandemic started, so I had my US passport. So I was really lucky that I could get back without having to worry, you know. And so, yeah, I think it is hard, but I think just the opportunities that I get out in the States to do what I love doing. I don't think I have had the opportunity to do that in the UK. Maybe in the future, who knows? But I think, you know, the benefits far outweigh the negative. I can come back whenever I want, and I know that.
So you make the move, you're in the States, Sarah lands. Where do you start? What's your first experience in the US?
I landed in Atlanta with $1,000 cash. I remember that, with one suitcase full of clothes probably. And I met this man on the plane who was from Arizona, and he helped me get through customs because, you know, I was 18. I had never flew by myself before. And he helped me get through and kind of spoke to him at the gate a little bit. And then he kind of actually took me to my gate to make sure I could get on the next plane to Starkville, Mississippi, because I started at Mississippi State. And yeah, from there, I was there for a year, 2009. 2008 to 2009. And then I transferred to a smaller Division I school in Lake Charles, Louisiana. So I kind of had the, you know, the SEC feel, and then I kind of had a smaller Division I mid-major feel too. And I think that's what's kind of set us up for coaching, is I've kind of had, you know, experience of transferring. We all know what the transfer portal is like right now, but I had that experience of being kind of a little fish in a massive pond, and then a bigger fish in a smaller pond. And so I think just getting those two experiences has been pivotal in my career so far.
Were you playing soccer at those schools as well?
Yes, I was. Sorry, yes.
So what was was there when you came and played in the US, was there kind of a difference or a feeling out of like, this is a different game? Or did you just kind of realize like soccer is soccer? And
No, I think it was different. I think the SEC, it's a very athletic conference. I was a much more, my speed of play was definitely a lot slower. I was definitely a lot more technical. You know, the training was obviously tougher because you're training every day. And I played for a sport academy, like I said earlier, and the training, obviously that was the best experience I could have had to prepare us to go to America, because you get to train every day. I was also playing club, so we train twice a week for club, we train every day for the academy, but there's nothing that can prepare you for a preseason in the United States. And I think at that time it was 2 days and 3 days. And so I just think the physical load on your body was completely different. And I was fit. I was really fit. I think there's a difference from, we all know there's difference from being, the fittest on the team physically, cardiovascularly, but, in terms of soccer fitness was completely different. So yeah, there was a difference for sure. And obviously when I transferred, a difference again. Smaller conference, and I think they were on the back end of winning the conference a couple of years prior, and so they kind of had their systems in place of how things worked. And but yeah, it was definitely different, but like you said, at the same time, football's football. But I wish I could go back, because what now is, can kind of apply that, but obviously we could all say that.
As you started going through this, in the back of your mind, because you talked about, I'm not going to the professional ranks. So even as you're going through the experience at Mississippi State and then moving to the mid-major, are you constantly kind of taking parts of the coaching style and how that, because you said like the mid-major was very set up, had organized, and were those things that you were already pulling and saying, you know what, when I start and I have my own program, these are some of the things that I like what things were you picking up on?
Yeah, 100%. I think like I was saying earlier, I was obsessed with man management. So just kind of observing kind of how coaches interact with players. If we got something that was a set piece binder, like I was keeping it and I was scanning it into my computer. Yeah, I would say at Mississippi State, not so much, just because I would say I was just kind of trying to survive at that time of my career. You're 18, kind of into the fire, you're in season. I would say when I transferred to McNeese, I would say, yeah, I kept everything and I backed everything up, and I still have that today, actually. We actually joke, me and my friend joke all the time, because everything that I get, I back up on Google Drive. But yeah, we had this binder that had, the summer packet in every year. It had the preseason schedule in every year, and kind of, different little training activities you could do at home. So all that, I would always keep. I still have that today in paper copy, but I also always back it up. So I keep everything. But yeah, I did. Like I said, I was obsessed with the X's and O's, and I used to follow certain coaches as well in the country, around the country, coaches that I would have dreamed to play for, like somebody like Becky, which I'm sure we'll chat about later. Would have loved to have played for the University of Florida, but I knew I wasn't good enough, but had always followed the Gators, and that was something that I also did as well. It was follow other teams while I was playing.
So I'm assuming you finish up at McNeese State, go through, get your degree. Here's fearless Sarah, who's gone all the way across the ocean to do her college time in the US, play some soccer. What's the next kind of process or step for you?
Yeah, I became a volunteer with McNeese State after that, and I got my master's paid through, I actually worked at the rec complex on campus, and they were going through a hiring freeze at the time. Louisiana, the state of Louisiana, it's still kind of struggling, but financially they were struggling. They had a hiring freeze. So anybody that retired wasn't getting replaced. And so I had worked at the rec from basically when I got to McNeese until I finished. And so they said, look, you know the ropes here, you can take over this lady's position that's retiring. And it was kind of basically like memberships and kind of more office and admin work. So instead of working at the front desk or in the gym, you could now work in the office, and we'll kind of promote you and we'll pay for your master's degree. So I kind of snapped their hand off at that, to be honest, and became a volunteer with McNeese State, who I played for. But it was really hard because a lot of those players I played with, and they were my friends, and so I kind of I found that a bit of a challenge. And I knew the ropes, right? It was comfortable for me. So I was there, I was at McNeese, I believe, for a year and a half, finished my master's degree. And then I think every college coach in the country got an email from me from D1, D2, D3, and AIA. I kind of paid, I think I paid $50 for this like directory basically that gives you everybody's email addresses. And so when I was doing my master's and the admin work, like I would send off emails, basically like personalized emails to coaches that I would like to work for. And obviously I didn't have citizenship or a green card at any point in that time. So that was really difficult because a lot of times people would email back and say, we'd love to have you, but we can't sponsor you. Right. And so, yeah, so I did that. I think, like I said, I think everybody got an email from me at some point if they were coaching at that point in time. And from there, I landed a position at Wayland Baptist in Plainview, Texas. It was my first coaching gig, like full time. I think I was making like $25,000 at that point, and I thought I was a millionaire because it was my first like full-time job. And I did some teaching on the side. I taught a nutrition class because I had kind of an education background. That was my bachelor's degree. And yeah, I did that for a year. And then from there, I kind of felt like I'd gone as far as I could go with that program and wanted something a little bit more higher level, I guess I would say. And so I emailed Randy Waldrum from the Houston Dash. And I knew that was kind of a new franchise. And obviously I went to school down in Lake Charles, Louisiana. So I wanted to kind of get closer to Houston where all my friends and people that I knew were. And he emailed right back when I emailed him and asked if I could help and told me to come down for tryouts and funded it myself. And I was on a plane to Houston and he kind of let me help run the tryouts. And from there, I flew back to West Texas and decided, you know, like you have to figure out whether at the end of the season, if I want to continue or, you know, kind of go down this route. So got back in touch with Randy and he was like, look, if you want to come down for this game, get yourself down here. So drove 9 hours to Houston, drove 9 hours back. And I was like, this is definitely what I want to do. And so I started commuting. I left Wayland and I started commuting basically 2.5 hours a day there and 2.5 hours back for training. So it was 5 hours round trip for training, 5 hours round trip for games. And I was kind of just like a volunteer assistant coach and honestly had absolutely no business being there. Was working with players like Collie Lloyd and Megan Klingenberg. And at the time it was 2015 and the women had just won the World Cup. And so it was just great timing, honestly. And like I said, Randy was so gracious to give us an opportunity to be there and pick up cones and do some data analytics for them and you know, warm the players up, stuff like that. And then from there, with the goalkeeping coach, Tom Brown, I got a job with him at Sam Houston State as an assistant. So that was my first Division I gig. He needed somebody with an exercise science background, which is what I had, as well as kind of teaching. My master's was in exercise physiology, and kind of before I came to America, I was kind of in the exercise science field at college. And yeah, so I was at Sam Houston State and I was teaching there as well. I was teaching some kinesiology classes. Always loved the education route. I don't know why, I just always have. And was obviously working with Houston Dash and had kind of the setup. And then from there, obviously, like I was telling you earlier, I'd always followed Becky at UF, and I knew I needed another, my next opportunity. I felt like I kind of got stagnant a little bit, so got in touch with her and ended up at Florida as an equipment manager. So give a full-time salary with Sam Houston, teaching salary and coaching salary, and went in and became an equipment manager and was basically getting a second master's degree and, you know, getting a little bit of money on scholarship. And there we are. That's kind of the story up to there. And then from there, obviously, Becky retired and I became her director of ops after 4 years. And she retired. And then I decided, you know, I didn't want to just jump into a job. I really want to be, I guess, I just really want to be mindful about where I'm going to work, because I needed to align with what I believe in and, you know, kind of have an influence there. And so I decided to go to Penn State with Erica Dambach, get a completely different experience in Florida, and work there for the last semester and had a great experience. And now I'm here in England for Christmas and looking for the next opportunity.
So one of the things that I love is, one, when you talked about, and you were like 15 and a half, it took you 2 years to get everything processed and you were sending DVDs out. And then you come over here and then you send out all these mass emails to every coach across the US to, I'm going to go volunteer. I'm going to drive 2.5 hours. And where did this kind of like, I don't know what, determination and persistence, where is that? Because it sounds like it came from a young age. Where did that come from? Because it's really cool to hear, even the fact that you went from Sam Houston and teaching and all that stuff to equipment manager, like a lot of people would be like, why would you go and become an equipment manager when you clearly want to coach? But you knew that's the door that opens up. I've got to go in, I've got to take this advantage. And then you knowing Becky's quality and all that kind of stuff, knew this was just going to help you. But everything that you've talked about, you've had to grind and grind and grind to get here. Like people look at it and go, oh, she was at University of Florida, must have been wonderful. Oh, she's at Penn State, a really, really quality women's program. Everything's got to be hunky dory, but clearly there's a lot of that you went through to get to where you're at now.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think obviously it's intrinsic, it's obviously inside of us, but I just think that I did not have this illustrious playing career to back us up. I had a decent career in England. I don't think I had the best career in America, and I think that kind of drove us, as I needed to stand out somehow. And I think that's what spurred it, to be completely honest. And then I think as I got kind of into the Houston Dash experience and the Sam Houston State experience, I just realized I had so much more to learn, like especially at Wayland, actually, because that was the first job I had and I didn't really know what I was doing. And I was still young. I was like 24, 25. And, you know, some of the players are 22, 23, like very similar ages. And I just felt like there was always something I was just like, wow, I've got so much more to learn. And so I think the path I've taken is probably the most unconventional path ever. I would probably say, like, when you look at my resume, like you look at the titles, and the titles don't quite have the, you know, like equipment manager, director of ops, volunteer assistant. Like I've kind of taken this long way around, if you like, but I'm kind of trying to just get prepared as possible. I know, like in the coaching field, a lot of times, you know, coaches get burned out. You know, there's a lot of women that don't stay in coaching. And so the more conversations I had with Becky at Florida about that, the more I was, and I loved my time at Penn State and Florida and Houston and Sam Houston. But I just think, you know, Becky went from a mentor to me to like a best friend. It just sounds kind of crazy, but I just realized, you know, how hard winning is, and especially at that level. And I just realized I had so much more to learn. And so the more people I basically just threw myself onto my own internship over the last 10 years, if you like. And it's like you said, it's been a challenge. It has not been easy. There's a lot of things you have to give up, and but I wouldn't change it, because I know the next place that I go, I'm going to be able to have a lot of influence, whether that's as a head coach or an assistant coach or whatever role it is. You know, I just think that I'm prepared now, rather than just jumping at the you know, there's been opportunities along the way that I've turned down for other reasons, and I just think I was not ready at that time, or it wasn't the right opportunity for me. And so I think just, you know, kind of being selective has really helped us up until this point. And so that's kind of where I'm at.
You brought up Becky, and what were some of the big takeaways that you took from her? Not one being that it's a female in, like, at the highest level in the college game. Becky building that program pretty much from the bottom up. What were some of the things that you picked from her and said, this is what I want to take from Becky, like that she, and, you know, put into you, that even what, I guess maybe even took it from that mentor to, hey, we're, like she called it when I talked to her, thinking partners, like that friendship type thing. What were some of the things that you loved about that experience?
I think me and Becky are very different, but in a good way. And I think, for example, like I am like no, I'm not saying Becky's not organized, because she is, but I'm very organized, and I like to know, you know, we're going to get to the airport for this time. And I think you read this in the book probably. And like I'm freaking out inside because I'm responsible for 40 people on this bus, and if we don't get there on time, you know, that's kind of on me. And so I think just learning to reframe things. There's a lot of things in coaching that are uncontrollable, that you have no control over. And so, you know, you just think about, like, when you play a game, like, you have no control of the referees, you have no control of the weather, you have no control about how this player is going to play. The only thing you can really control is substitutions and coaching, your own coaching, right? But there's a lot of uncontrollable. So I think just understanding that in coaching, there's a lot of things that are out of your control, and being able to having the ability to reframe and not take things personal. I think those would be, there's a lot of things I learned. Geez, I would have to really sit down and think about that. But I would say reframing, not taking things personal, and understanding and coaching how many uncontrollables there is, and you just kind of have to go with the ebbs and flow of it. So yeah, I think that's what's kind of funny is just learning to, like I said, just learn to go with the ebbs and flows. And Becky always laughed at me because I would always stress out about the littlest things because I want everything to be perfect, and that's just not how coaching is. It's when you have a training session and you have a squad of 18 and you've set up this session for 18 players and then 2 drop out and now you only have 16 and you're like, well, now my session's ruined. You just got to adapt, right? And so that's coaching. That is coaching. It's not about having the session on paper. It's can you adapt to what you've got on the field? 2 different things. And so I think just those were some tidbits I learned at my time in Florida. And it was kind of sad when it all ended, just because I was kind of there on the back end of Becky's career. And it was just, I just felt like every day it was like, I didn't even have to, like, just talking to Becky, I would learn like 5 things through the day, and it's just kind of every day was just kind of professional development. And so, and she's just a person of high integrity. And I just hope at one point in my career I can kind of have, a 16th of the type of career that she's had. She was a great mentor, and like I said, we're obviously really good friends. We're together through some really high times and some really low times in her career, and I think that's kind of probably why our relationship kind of flourished throughout the 4 years that I was there.
What was that like when Becky shared with you that like she was going to step down from Florida? What was that kind of time frame like for you in terms of like, oh, this is a mentor friend, but you also understood like everything's got to come to an end at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we always talked about it as a staff, the 4 of us, me, Vic, well, the 5 of us, because I was actually Shelley Lyle was also the director of ops before me, but we had talked about it in staff meetings. And she gave me plenty of time and plenty of time to figure out what I wanted to do. I kind of knew on the back end of the fall that it was happening. And when she told me, I kind of was in denial, I think, for a little bit, but I also I went through all the emotions. I was kind of like happy for her because I knew like she was eventually going to move on and wanting to do other things. And then I was sad, and then I was angry. But, I think that's all normal, and we laugh about it. But she went out on her own terms, and I think she left well. And I think that's one of the most important things is when you leave somewhere, you leave well. And that's something I learned as well from her, is when I left Florida too, like wanting to make sure it was in a better place than when I got there. And whether that was, creating a new staff guide for the new staff and making sure everything was in place for the next season. So when the staff came in, they didn't have to do much in terms of logistics. They could just get in and coach right away. And so, she left well and left on her own terms. And obviously she got back into coaching right after that.
Yeah, that's right on.
Like, all the retirement stuff we did for you, I want it back. But I just wanted to make sure that obviously all 3 of them retired, Becky, Vic, and Alan. And I think as the director of ops, I felt a weight of responsibility to make sure that they were celebrated properly, especially with COVID, because obviously there was some challenges with what we could and couldn't do. And so I think that was just, kind of making sure that they felt like they kind of went out with a bang. And I think they felt that way.
What was the impetus behind writing your book that you have shared? And there was a time where you put it out on Twitter, where if you filled out a Google form and you can get a copy, and I got one, and I loved reading it. It was awesome, like real anecdotal stories and all that kind of stuff. What was the spur to put that together and then to share that and what have you?
Well, I started it this time last year, and the reason I started was obviously because I knew she was retiring. And so I couldn't think of Becky is not a gift person. And so I couldn't really think of anything personally to give her that would be I just couldn't think of anything that would have, like, obviously like a retirement mug or something. I don't really know. I was just kind of like, I never thought of this, And so I was like, what could be something that would be, like really thoughtful. And so that's kind of what I came up with, it was kind of just supposed to be to her in the beginning. And then when I started to write it, I was like, I feel like more people need to hear this. And so it took a while. Like I have so much I had respect for authors in the beginning, but like just writing that, like, I don't know, like just all the edits and, like things didn't sound right. And I just like having how many times I had to read over it. I was kind of sick of it by the time I'd finished it. I was like, I've read this way too many times. But, the idea wasn't to put it on Amazon and make money off it. It was to share it with other people, but have a centralized location where it could be. And that's just so it's on the internet and people can access it. But the idea was to share it with as many people as possible. It wasn't to, I think every time somebody buys it on Amazon, I make like 70 cents or something. Like actually don't actually don't make anything. It was not the point. It was just the point was to get it out there so people could read it and see what the experience was like, at the University of Florida during the time that I was there. And there's so much more. I could have continued writing, to be honest with you. And there was obviously some things that I could have put in there and took out, and some funny stories, like when we got pulled over by the police at Orange Beach, like, it's funny stuff that you probably couldn't put in there, like just stuff like that. But yeah, it was like I said, I thought it was just kind of a really good way to kind of celebrate her retirement from my point of view to her. She brought me in as a stroppy 27-year-old and kind of shaped me into this person that hopefully will go on and be a good coach or a great coach in the future, and basically influence young women for the rest of their lives. And so just seeing the impact that she's had on her program, and it's just inspiring, really.
The one thing too that I loved when I talked with her, and I'm hearing it from you, is like that relation side piece was huge. Like I talked with her about the Gator family, like just still staying connected with the ones from 20 years ago to now, to the relationship and the impact that she's made on you, to the point where you felt impacted enough to share it in like a written form type of thing. Is that something, if and when you become and run your own program, is how important is the relationship piece to you in terms of your coaching?
Yeah, it's massive. I think it's centered around who I am as a coach, and I think that's why I went to UF, was and to work for Becky, was basically because that's what I believe in. That's kind of my coaching philosophy. I think just seeing the impact of the amount like when she was retiring, the amount of people that she was trying to tell. And I was just like, Becky, like, you're not going to be able to tell everybody before the announcement comes out publicly. You're just going to have to, there's going to be some people that are upset. Like, it's just the way it is. You have a web of connections that are just massive. And she was like, no, we're going to do it. And we did. We got through everybody pretty much. But just seeing players come back, and, we had players there coming back from, I think when she retired, we had somebody come back from like the 99 team and then the 2005 team. And, they're all connected. And just that impact of, she goes to all the weddings and she knows all their birthdays, and it's just kind of, and it's just a really unique, it was a really unique experience. And I think that was her biggest worry, was just making sure that the alumni were taken care of for the future. And so I think that speaks volumes of just who she is.
You talked earlier too about being able to see Becky and coaching at that high level, at a level where you said it's really hard to win. What does that mean? Like, what are some of the things that make it so difficult to create a successful program, and then secondly, stay at the top throughout, the consecutive seasons?
Yeah, well, even just finishing on the back end of, Penn State, we got to the Sweet 16, and we were had a lot of injuries. But I just think just seeing Florida over the last 4 years, and being at Penn State obviously only for a smidge of time, just seeing how, two huge powerhouse programs in women's soccer, and just seeing how hard it is to win, in terms of, like I said, like just the uncontrollables of, you've recruited, X number of players to come in. Now you've got, knee injuries, or, whatever type of injuries you've got. But just and then the training load, and just trying to keep up with the generation of athlete that you're coaching, having to reinvent yourself every year because things change so rapidly. I mean, we've got all these different apps and technology, and and the parity of the game and the players, like, I just think it's really hard to win at this level. And it's not just winning once, but to continue winning. I just think just being in that environment, just seeing that it's not just because you're this name university doesn't mean you're guaranteed to win, right? Nothing is guaranteed ever. And so just the daily, I mean, Becky and Erica, like in Randy and Tom too, but just seeing the level of detail and the amount of hours they put into, the time in their program. It's not just, I have been here for 15 years or 20 years or 27 years, and everything's kind of like you said, everything's smooth sailing. It's not. These people that are at the top are continually trying to work because there's people at the bottom that are trying to catch up. And so I just think, just because you're at the top of the mountain, like you've got to continue to grind, because the view, you can only look at it for a little bit. And you just, like I said, I just think at this level it is so hard to win. And I was actually talking to a coach last week on the phone, and we were talking about how she had just won conference the previous year, then won it this year, and she said that this year was actually sweeter because it was like they were back-to-back champions. The first one was great, but just consistently get that success, just realizing how hard that is. And so yeah, that I think that's what I would say. I would just say, obviously in 2017 at Florida, we made it to the Elite Eight, and then 18 was kind of, I think, Becky's first losing season, and just kind of to be kind of around that at that time was it was difficult, obviously, but to be around it for me now, like I look back and I'm like, wow, like I kind of journaled that season, which was kind of cool, just to kind of see how everybody kind of handled adversity, because at the end of the day, that's when your true character shows. And I think one thing that speaks volumes about that season, and I'll never forget this, is we had a really, really tough conference schedule. I think it was like the number one toughest conference schedule in the country at that time. And now, and obviously we played SEC play, and we never lost the locker room that entire year. And I think teams that go through losing seasons usually do at some point, their locker room cracks, and we never did. And I think that's something that was really unique, and just kind of seeing how that, how kind of Becky led us through that. And then 19, I think we got beat in the first round of the NCAA tournament, and then 20 was a COVID year, which that was completely different ball game. And then obviously at Penn State, just kind of seeing our team with the amount of injuries that we had, and still like, just I think at Penn State the experiences were different because the players on that team was probably the most cohesive group of players I've ever been around, and just kind of seeing how those players dragged that team through to the Sweet 16 was pretty remarkable.
What do you think? Because I was just thinking about that. You said the locker room didn't fall apart during that struggle for Florida, and then you just talked about a team of Penn State who had injuries and people had to keep stepping up. So part of that equation clearly is the players. So what was special about that, the Florida group, when they were going through the low of like, I'm in a program that's been really, really successful, and now we are struggling clearly. And then a Penn State group, which probably had really high aspirations to go probably all the way, but then of now, like, what was special about those groups beyond just awesome head coaches?
Yeah, I think I'll tell you the difference. The difference was at Penn State that the team was kind of turned over to the players, kind of took over the team, whereas at Florida, I felt like Becky navigated us through those times. And I think the big message with the Florida team was everybody needs to lean in because this is hard, and leaning out is natural. Like you can lean out, but if you lean out, you don't get the reps of getting punched in the face, right? And if you don't get the reps of getting punched in the face, it's going to hurt even more eventually. And so if you lean in, you're taking the reps, right? And it is harder to lean in. It's easier to pull away and become disinterested. And I think just kind of that was kind of Becky's mantra, pulling us, like kind of leading us through that season. And I think at Penn State, it was kind of, we had our captains, we had Kerry Abello and Sam Coffey, and both phenomenal, I can't say that word, fantastic leaders. And they led that team. I felt like we kind of were able to have focus more on the tactics and the game strategy because the captains were basically leading that ship, which was kind of like, I've never really felt that. I've never been a part of that yet. And so just to kind of see the differences was kind of really cool. So I would say that those were the differences.
I was going to say, so as what ended up, at what point did you say when you were at Florida, like, hey, I've gotten into, because you kind of said that about Sam Houston State. You said, I think there's more to this. Like, I've learned what I can get here. I know I need to learn more. What was the impetus and kind of the why behind going to Penn State this past fall?
Well, I knew that with the retirement, there would be, with COVID and the retirement, there was going to be limited opportunities, jobs. And so I basically had 6 months to decide if there was an opportunity open at a certain school. There's certain people in the country that I would love to work for, right? And there's not many times in your career where you can basically put everything aside and go work for somebody for free, right? And so an email came through the job server, or the list server, sorry, and Becky forwarded it to me and basically was like, Penn State's looking for a volunteer. And as soon as it came through, I was like, yes, that's it. And obviously spoke to Erica, but I just think, again, like Erica's experience and her, Olympic gold medalist, World Cup bronze medalist, works as an assistant coach to the national team in the Olympics and obviously other World Cups. Her experience in the Ivy League, her experience with Penn State, and just she's been there, I think, I know she's been over there well over 12 years, but probably 12 to 16 years. And just the amount of success she's had, just kind of seeing somebody else do it differently, because obviously there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? And so, I think I just knew like that's someone I'd always kind of had on the radar. Like every time she would do like a Zoom during COVID, or a podcast or anything that she's done, like I've always listened to, and always like the way she's kind of carried herself and the type of person she is. And so it was just kind of like I knew that was the opportunity for me. And I knew this job window would be big coming up in December with obviously COVID. I guess I thought it was potentially ending, but clearly not. But I knew it would be a bigger job window. And so, kind of talked to Erica about, kind of just doing this for a season, and, kind of then seeing what happens with, that kind of the job market. And I am married and have lived apart from my spouse for the last 7 years. Feels like an absolute eternity. And she's retiring in February from teaching, well, education basically, and it's not teaching, she's an assistant principal. And so it was kind of felt like I had 6 months to kind of go off again and get one more go at seeing somebody do it differently. And so that's where we're at, and it's perfect in terms of where we're at. And so that was kind of the onus behind that. It was just I had 6 months to kind of go off and get one more go and see how somebody else does it. And like I said, like a great experience at Penn State, very different to UF in great ways. And that's what you want. You want a different experience. And so I'm really grateful for that time there. And it was a fun ride, that's for sure.
The one thing that I loved, you talked about with that one group with Florida, the lean in versus lean out. And you clearly are a lean in person. Like, again, when you were talking about the move to Penn State, in my head, I heard volunteer. And you're like, yep, I'm going. Yeah. Like, I love the fact that it's continuously, you're just like, look, I just want to go. And you knew that the amount of things that you were going to learn and experience and see was going to benefit you more than chasing, like even the Amazon book. Like, clearly that was just your opportunity to show respect and how much you love Becky. It wasn't about making tons of money. Like, clearly your is just a passion and love of soccer, and then going through it. So now here you are. What does Sarah have in plan moving forward? What are some of the options or your hopes and dreams moving forward now?
I think I'm just going to be patient. Like I always have. Things always work out, and there's nothing really kind of out there just yet for me. I'm not really sure. That can be scary, right? I mean, kind of unemployed, which is kind of a scary word. But I think when I was filling out, I think I was updating my resume or filling something out, I can't remember, and looked at all the positions that I've had, and I'm like, I've been a volunteer more than I've actually had a full-time job, which is kind of crazy, and I've made it work. But yeah, I think just kind of waiting. When the next opportunity comes up, I'll know it's the right opportunity. And like I said earlier, like I think whatever role that is, it does for me. Like could be an assistant role, could be a head coaching role, and I think I would prefer to be an assistant next. To be totally honest, I think I can have such a big influence with everything that I've picked up over the last 8 years, if you like, 8 to 10 years, and the experiences that I've had. And I think I can have like a great influence as an assistant. But I also think, you're never ready to be a head coach, but, after working for Randy Waldrum, Becky Burley, and Erica Dambach, like at some point you have to give it a whirl and see, if everything that you've kind of learned and there's things you like, there's things you don't like, and picking and pulling from each person and making it your own, and eventually going off and doing it yourself and building the staff and building a program is exciting to me as well. But I don't know, I just want to, I think there's three things for me. I just want to enjoy where I work. I want to have an influence where I am. And I just want to work with good people, and wherever that lands, I'll be happy with. I think as long as I have those three things in place. And obviously, marrying your personal life with your professional life, which is something I have not done yet. And that's obviously been difficult as you get older. I think when you're younger, you're just like, yeah, okay, bye. And you're trying to just, build your career because you know that you've got to, kind of get after it when you're young. That's when you can. You don't have any ties. And so, yeah, I just think I'll know when the right opportunity comes up. And I'm not really a patient person. So this is good for me, I think.
What is the possible outlook on maybe going to the professional level? Like you talked about when you were a youth, there wasn't a whole lot of opportunities below like the U20s and et cetera. Now the English Premier League with the women's, and that's got the Champions League and all that type of stuff. Is there any part of you that would want to come back to England and set roots there and possibly attack the professional?
Yeah, I would never say no. I think the women's game here is obviously, there's a lot more opportunities than there was when I left. I think for me right now on my radar would be college coaching. I just think I can have a greater influence at that level right now. And but yeah, I would never say no. I would never write it off. I think, I really enjoyed my time at Houston. It's very different to obviously college coaching. And I got that experience when I was younger, so that I'm kind of grateful for that. Well, I'm really grateful for that. I'm really grateful that I got that experience to kind of know what it was like. But yeah, I would never say no to that. But I think just kind of the path that I've taken, I think, has prepared me for a position in college coaching. But if a professional opportunity came up, I don't think you could overlook it. You definitely have to look into it. So.
And I asked earlier about when you were 16, 17, and you were telling your parents like, look, I'm going to go to the US, and they were kind of like, okay. Now that they've seen you go and do it and have success and grow and all this, what has been their take on your experience in the States and what have you?
Yeah, I actually really like it because they really don't know what I do. They have no idea. There's something really refreshing about that. But yeah, they're proud. I mean, my parents, they know that they always say you land on your feet. Like if you got through in the air, you would land in butter. So they kind of joke that way. But yeah, they're really proud of me. I think I don't think they would ever say that to me, but I know they say that to other people. But yeah, like I said, I think they enjoy coming out. They've been to one game, my senior game they came to at McNeese. And obviously they love America and they try and come out every year. Obviously they haven't obviously with the pandemic, but I think they see that I'm happy. And for anyone who sees that their son or daughter is happy, they're happy, And so, like I said, I don't think they entirely know what I do, but they know I coach football and that's about it. They probably wonder what I do for the rest of the day, but but yeah. So I think there's something that I really like about that.
How big of a support has it been to you? Because you mentioned your wife being was doing vice principal and what have you. How has it been having that person kind of by your side, even if maybe not proximity wise, but enough to kind of bounce, like if you're going through ups or downs, have that person to kind of bounce that isn't a quote unquote, probably a soccer person, but still an educator. So understand some of the things that you're struggling with.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because she was actually a collegiate basketball coach years back now, and so in Division 1, and so she understands the job. She understands, like, she watches Newcastle United because I make her, but and so she kind of like understands soccer in terms of basketballs. We know soccer and basketball are, there's some similarities there, like especially on set pieces. We talk about picks and kind of all that kind of stuff, but Yeah, it's been great because I think it's just a sounding board of somebody who knows what the job's like and in education and, knows this generation. And so we kind of joke that, wherever I end up, she's fully invested, like wherever I've been, like she knows every kid on the roster. She knows where they're from. She knows their major, just fully invested. And I think that's all you can ask for, is to have somebody that's understands your job, right? And so I think moving forward throughout the rest of my career, she is a thinking partner just like Becky is. And yeah, I think it's huge. It's definitely over the last 8 to 10 years, again, just trying to navigate the path of living apart and stuff. And I think she just kind of understands, this is why we did it. This is exactly why we did it, to get to this point, so we can, move together and actually live a normal life.
This has been so cool because I've loved hearing, because like I talked about earlier, you see, like when I go on to Twitter and I can see underneath like where you were coaching at and all of your licenses and the book you've written. And this is like so refreshing to have like a spotlight of, here's the sacrifices I've made, here's what I've done, and what have you. And I'm super excited to see what the next steps and for your story, because I see, would there be any chance there might be another book down the road? Is that something that's kind of like a little thing in your stomach that's like, hey, even though it was, as you say, kind of another kind of grueling thing, having to keep going over it and read it, and was that something that you might try to do again?
I think there should be a volume 2 at some point. I think just with the experiences that I've had, I think one of the things that I want to make sure that I do throughout my career is, I've had so many people invest in me, and so I want to make sure that I invest in the next generation of, whether that's if I'm an assistant or a head coach or I'm not in coaching, just making sure that, I invest in somebody else like I was invested, whether that's, letting somebody, kind of live in your spare bedroom because they're trying to work out how they can do the same thing I did, like I want to pay it forward in some way. And so yeah, maybe it'll be a long way down the road, but maybe it'll be a different storyline. But yeah, I hope there'll be a volume 2 at some point. But like I said, I think in the experiences that I've had from all the coaches that I've been fortunate to work for would be just to pay it forward like they have, for me.
And if people want to connect with you, or just kind of to see where you've been at, or just even follow with more questions or whatever, what's a great way to kind of connect and follow the Coach Lowdon journey?
Yeah, they can DM me on Twitter. You can find me on most social media platforms apart from TikTok. Still not sure what that one is. But yeah, I'm on. You can message me on Twitter, or which is, I think it's just Sarah Lowdon. And then also I can send you my email address if you want, and you can put that out there, or I can just say it right now. It's totally up to you.
You can just say it. That's cool.
Yeah, so it's Sarah, SARAHN, and then it's LOWDON @hotmail.com.
And I'll put the Twitter and her email in the notes for this podcast episode. But Sarah, I really appreciate it. This is so awesome because clearly I'm sitting here in southwestern Ohio, you're over in England, and this was so cool to kind of try to get it to work out. And even my family was super excited because they're like, dude, you're going to be talking to someone all the way across the ocean. It's like one of the pluses of like the quarantine and stuff is that we have things like Zoom and other options to be able to chat. But I really appreciate you taking the time to hop on with me.
Well, I'm closer to your mom's city than I am to you.
That's true.
Edinburgh, right? Your mom's from, is that right?
Yeah. So my mother's from Edinburgh, Scotland. And that's, my parents met somewhere there in England at, I think, Oxford University.
Cool.
And then, yeah, so.
It's a small world.
It is. It's crazy. But again, I appreciate it. And I will shut this episode down. This is Kieron with the Coach's Corner Chats with Sarah Lowdon, and I'm out. Peace.